Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our guests who have joined us today. I'm Luke Downs, Partner Marketing Manager here at Similarweb and host of this exclusive webinar brought to you by ourselves and Momentum Commerce. We will shortly be diving into the topic of building a winning Amazon strategy, the key data sources for success. But before we get there, I'm delighted to welcome Brandon Newquist, Similarweb Product Specialist, and Eileen Deaver, Head of Strategy at Momentum Commerce. Momentum Commerce is based in Texas and offers brands a clear path to competitive advantage at digital retail through marketplaces such as Amazon. With an experienced data-driven team and a flexible technology-enabled model, they provide unrivaled brand visibility and performance to their customers. Today's presentation will be followed by a Q&A, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation using the chat feature below the viewing pane. I will pose these questions to Brandon and Eileen at the end of the webinar, but until then, I would like to hand you over to Brandon.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for attending. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about how Momentum Commerce is using shopper intelligence to, enhance and grow their brand's market share on Amazon. So when we think about Similarweb and their offering for CPG or e-commerce companies, we have two distinct offerings. The first is our digital research intelligence, which is more on the D2C side of things. And on that side of the house, we're looking at Google search, keyword traffic, so on and so forth, a really good way to get a lay of the land for, your D2C site. Today, however, we're going to be focusing on our marketplaces platform called Shopper Intelligence, which is essentially a deep dive into Amazon.com. Eileen, you want to go to the next slide? Perfect. And so we think about Shopper Intelligence, we can kind of bucket the features and data we have in the tool into three distinct categories. So we have kind of sales performance data, which encompasses category level data, brand level data, and product level data. We have on-site search data as well, and we have that at the category level, the brand level, the product level. You can also just analyze a single keyword. And then last but not least, we have really in-depth insights into digital shopper behavior. You can look at things like cross-shopping behavior between brands. You can look at loyalty and retention figures or demographic analysis, so on and so forth. So a lot of really interesting stuff there. And I'm going to flip it over to Eileen now, and she's going to talk to everybody about how she's been leveraging the tool to, enhance her brand's market share.
Hi, thank you so much for the intro, Luke and Brandon, and thanks for the intro on Momentum Commerce. Just a little bit more detail about our company. We're a boutique 50-person technology and services company focused on helping great brands win on Amazon. Some of our clients use us like a media agency where we do full media management for them. And we also have some of our clients outsource all of their full brand management to us as well, where we do things like pricing, content management, inventory planning, forecasting, et cetera. And then my direct team supports clients like banks, private equity firms, as well as enterprise CPG companies to look at things like brand studies, market studies. We'll do due diligence reports, and we provide a lot of growth planning for those brands as well. And we've been using, as Brandon mentioned, Similarweb's shopper tool to really enhance our data suite and provide really great actionable recommendations to our clients. And so today I'm going to kind of take you through some examples of how we use the shopper tool in our insights and recommendations, as well as how we marry that with our own insights that the Momentum Commerce team has come up with as well. We'll cover market size. We'll also look at how we appraise the competitive landscape, crafting effective growth plans, and then also how we think about potentially expanding into a new category or even bringing a category to Amazon. And then we have additional resources in the appendix that will be available for downloading after the webinar as well. And look forward to any Q&A you have at the end too. So to get started, why are we here? Why are we talking about this? Digital retail is really on the rise. Amazon is absolutely huge. Over the last few years, we've seen it grow exponentially, as well as seeing other platforms like the retail media platforms on Walmart, Instacart, Target rise significantly as well. And we're seeing that online marketplaces have really become the new way to access consumers. We're seeing that basically over 65% of consumers are now starting their product searches on Amazon, which is a big shift over the last few years, where Google was primarily where a user would start their product search originally. So now it's not only where users are going, but also, a huge brand equity building option. And then there's a low cost of starting distribution. And then also Amazon is now the #1 shopping destination in the world. Last year, we saw the news that it's now surpassed Walmart for retail sales. So it's now the top retailer in the world outside of China. And using Similarweb Shopper Tool, we also have been able to see that looking at category sales across Amazon, Target.com, and Walmart.com, Amazon represents about 90% of sales. So that, specifically for Walmart.com, Target.com, looking at it from a digital retail perspective. But what's interesting about that is we get a question from our clients on, should we be expanding to other marketplaces? What does the opportunity look like? That varies by category, but across the board, it's generally the lion's share is on Amazon and averaging about 90% overall. And so a few trends have basically, happened over the last few years on Amazon. The Amazon platform is constantly shifting and evolving. For those on the phone today that, are already selling on Amazon, I'm sure that you're familiar with some of the woes and, interesting hiccups that can happen on the platform. One of the things that we've noticed over the very recently, so we were able to pull search demand. And so this is something we look at Momentum Commerce a lot, is search traffic. We were able to see that in October, search traffic actually fell 3% year over year. And so that was a little bit different by category, but generally across most categories, we were seeing a decline in search volume. And I'm sure that a lot, again, of folks that are on the phone potentially selling their products on Amazon have seen some interesting behavior over the last few months. We're definitely seeing that consumer demand is coming down, with the exception of a few categories like beauty and personal care, health and households, pet supplies, as well as jewelry. But a lot of the major categories that really had kind of more of a legacy place on the platform are starting to come down. So the point of this is that as a marketer, as someone who's running their business on Amazon, we need to really be even savvier than ever. And similarly, we're seeing a trend where, and I'm sure as a consumer, most of you have noticed this, you were seeing that sponsored ads are now making up a really high percentage of the search results that you're seeing. This is just an example. I have an almost 10-month-old daughter. I was looking for 12-month clothes for her because she's been outgrowing them. And so even just looking at this example for this particular search query, we're seeing that sponsored ads are making up about 40% of the top 10 search results. Whereas 3 years ago, that was only about 20%. So what that means is to reach the consumer on Amazon, you have to have a really savvy media strategy because the majority of those first search results are going to be sponsored ads. And so looking at kind of the ways that we look at the shopper tool and how we use that, we pull a lot of the insights from the shopper tool to help inform things like sales growth, looking at market sizing, who's been historically winning, losing, gaining market share. So it's really important to understand what's happening in the market because what we've seen is, we get questions from our clients like, what rate of growth should we have for next year? And how is that relevant? How does that relate to the category overall? Or maybe they find that they're struggling to meet their sales objectives and they're trying to understand if there are any macro trends that might be impacting that outside of what's specifically within their control. And also trying to understand what's happening from a competitive standpoint as well. So wanted to dive into just a sample exercise here where we're going to look at the brand Carhartt and use the shopper tool as well as some of our own tools at Momentum to kind of do a little bit of analysis to understand what's happening with this brand on Amazon. So first of all, to size the market for Carhartt, so meaning, how large is the opportunity, or so how many sales are we actually seeing over the last 12 months for Carhartt on Amazon? This is an estimate using Similarweb Shopper Tool. If I had direct access to their count, then I would be able to validate the specific amount. But historically, we've seen that the revenue estimates for Similarweb are very accurate. And so what we're able to see over the last 12 months is that they are doing $377 million in revenue. From there, we can use their tool to dive into this by category. So this is filtered to Carhartt. We're able to see estimates for revenue as well as units sold, product views, other metrics as well by category. And these categories are Amazon's category taxonomy. So you'll see that, some of these category names will align directly with Amazon's taxonomy on the platform. Whereas, internally as a brand, you might have different names for this, but just note that using their shopper tool, it's aligned with Amazon's taxonomy, which for our sake is actually really helpful because it keeps things really consistent across the board. In this example, we're able to see that men within clothing, shoes, and jewelry is the largest category. And then within that, shops. So there's actually a shops category within men on Amazon. And so that's really where the majority of revenue for Carhartt is coming from. And then it's also important. So that's what's happening for the brand. And then if we want to zoom out a little bit and look at what's happening in the category, we can look at that using the shopper tool as well. So here we're looking at their category sales performance section of the UI, going to clothing, shoes, jewelry, specifically looking at uniforms, work, and safety clothing within the men's category over the last 12 months. I'm able to see that the revenue estimate for that category in that time period is 526 million. And I'm also able to see some of the top brands. So you can see that Carhartt is a top brand in that category. Now, using that data, this is a view that we at Momentum like to look at for a lot of our clients to help them understand, how they're growing in the category, and then how the category is growing, and then also look at their own market share and how that's changing. So in this particular example, we looked at 4 key categories for Carhartt. One of them is Scullies and Beanies, which is kind of where their iconic Carhartt beanie is playing there. And so like looking at that category, for example, we're able to see that that particular category on Amazon grew 31% year over year, and Carhartt's revenue within that category only grew 14%. And so they're also losing market share in that particular category. So they're down about 8%. Now, if we wanted to understand maybe why that's happening, we can look at which brands are growing or declining by share of the market in that particular category that we used as an example. So here we're able to see the top brands in that particular category. So it's called Scullies and Beanies on Amazon. And we're able to see, the metrics that we noted on the last page, but then here are the other top brands. And what's really interesting is that the brands that have the asterisks next to them are based in China. They're Chinese manufacturers. So these are factory brands. So we are seeing more and more of these Chinese-based sellers in really coming on the marketplace and gaining market share, especially in apparel. Women's dresses, we see that. We've seen this in a lot of apparel categories, especially if the prices are a little bit lower here. So you can see that not only are they the other top brands, but they're gaining market share, and Carhartt is losing market share. And this is also just looking at this over time by month. You can get a sense of, their high market share is in the fall and winter when they're highly seasonal. It's coming down here, and then it starts to kind of creep back up in the fall. And then we also want to understand we talked a little bit about the competitive landscape looking at other top brands, but want to dive into that in a little bit more detail. So some of these things to look at, who's gaining, losing market share, which we already covered a little bit, average selling price, share of voice. Share of voice is a really important concept that we look at Momentum Commerce a lot. It's basically this idea of what percentage of the time are your brand's products appearing in the top X search results for a given search query or set of search queries. The point of that is looking at how discoverable your products are for relevant searches on the platform. And so looking at Similarweb shopper tools, so this is kind of in the sphere of competitive analysis and ways to look at this. Within the shopper tool, you can see kind of top brands. They also have a little matrix here showing, basically it's looking at conversion rate versus product views. So these are Carhartt and Dickies are getting a lot of product views. They're kind of mid-range on conversion rate, but then you're seeing other brands like JSM Auto seeing really high conversion rate. And that was within the uniforms, work, and safety category. And also within the shopper tool, there's this cross-shopping view. So basically you can see for users that are viewing your products, what percentage of those users are viewing products from another brand. And so in this case, you can read it as 15% of Carhartt product viewers also visited Dickies product pages. So you can look at this as well. And then this is kind of an example of the competitive landscape from a market share perspective and revenue perspective in the uniforms, work and safety clothing category. And then you can also look at this in the shopper tool by specific products. So you can actually see some of the top products in that category. And you can kind of slice and dice this a little bit more as well within the shopper tool. I touched on share of voice being an important theme that we look at Momentum Commerce. This view is actually a free tool that you can access on our website. And I also have a link to this in the presentation that you can download. But this is our Amazon brand index. And what it does is it essentially looks at the top 20 brands within a given category on Amazon by share of voice. So these are the top 20 brands for share of voice in the men's clothing category on Amazon. And what it does is it divides it into quadrants. So looking at leaders, which have a high paid share of voice and a high organic share of voice, as well as those that have a high organic share of voice, but a lower paid share of voice, and then lower paid and organic. And then challengers are brands that are really increasing their paid share of voice. So they're investing in media pretty aggressively, but their organic share of voice is a lot lower. So this helps give us a sense of the competitive landscape from a share of voice perspective. And it also gives us a couple of tidbits into how your competitors are, where they're focusing. Is it paid or organic? And then also we see ad density. So within the top 20 spots, we're basically seeing that 41% of them within the men's clothing category are ads. And we're also able to see some top keywords from an actual demand volume perspective in that category as well. And so the takeaway here for Carhartt is that when I pulled this, when looking at this in September, they had high organic share of voice, but slightly lower mid-range paid share of voice. And what's interesting is then when we pulled this for last week, we're able to see that Carhartt moved into that leader quadrant where they have high paid share voice and organic share voice, indicating that they likely really ramped up their advertising efforts over Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and beyond. And this is something that we also will often track for our clients. So we want to understand, what is the value of some of the optimizations and efforts that our team has been making, and looking at share voice and how it's changing over time, in addition to key business metrics like revenue, is something that we would actually look at and measure for our clients. This is another view of share voice where we're able to see kind of top brands by total. I know that text is a little bit small here, as well as paid and organic. Within the men's clothing category, one call out is that Amazon Essentials is a key leader, especially for paid share voice, but as well as organic. So in this case for Carhartt, some of their top competitors from a share voice perspective, Amazon Essentials, Hanes, Dickies, Levi's, Nike, Gildan, Fruit of the Loom. And so now I want to pivot and talk a little bit about some of the ways that we can craft a growth plan. At Momentum, Amazon is such a unique platform. There are a lot of factors that will indicate a product's success or a brand success that might vary a little bit from other channels. And so we've kind of created this custom audit, basically a 10-point audit that we look at and key attributes to really dive into to understand the health of a brand. So these would include product availability, content, pricing, deals and coupons, fulfillment method, channel control, consumer demand, feedback, competition, and advertising. So these are some of the 10 pillars of success that we've seen for our clients and where we really lean into and we audit. To do that, we also have a few tools. This is one of our it's called our Brand Explorer in our app. We have a Momentum Commerce app where we really look at key competitive insights from pricing, ratings and reviews, share of voice. This actually was not even the full view. We just cut off for one section where we're able to see some key product attributes for your brand versus other brands like Amazon Essentials, Hanes, Nike, Dickies. A couple of things to maybe call out here, just with average price. These are the top competitors that are showing up alongside Carhartt in search. And so their average price is higher than their key competitors, especially Amazon Essentials, which also helps explain why Amazon Essentials has developed such a stronghold in that category because price is on their side there. We also look at things like product content. Just at first glance, another thing here is that this item was out of stock. This is one of their highest selling products for Carhartt. And the fact that it's out of stock is a key call out, because availability essentially is marketing on Amazon. And so making sure that you're in stock is key. And also the bullets here, there's a lot of opportunity for improvement to ensure that we're leveraging all of the key search terms that a user would be searching for, and making sure that the descriptions are highly relevant to how that user is searching. We have a whole slew of best practices that we would assess these against and make recommendations. And then also want to call this out. So this is basically, so one of the questions we get from a lot of the brands that we work with is, okay, I have a best-selling product. How do I maintain my best-selling rank? So for example, if my product is number 1 or number 2 in my category, how do I ensure that I maintain that, given how much competition there is and how many changes there are on the platform? So one of the things we've done in our research is, and we have a large data science and engineering team at Momentum that helps us look at this, we're able to look at the key attributes that would be correlated to long-term dominance on the platform. So we have this idea of durable dominance that basically predicts the longevity of a product in maintaining that bestseller rank. And so in this case, we looked at a specific example for Maybelline. We were able to look at some of the key attributes that are really critical to maintaining that bestseller rank over time. Relative review index is key. So what this means is we're looking at the count of reviews for that particular product against the average of their competition in terms of review count. And so one of the things that they're actually doing really well here versus their competitors is that their number of product reviews is a lot higher. Review count is a key predictor of maintaining bestseller rank over time across almost every brand that we look at. But in particular, this is a custom kind of index just for this one product. So we can actually do this on the product level. We're also looking at, price, ratings, page share, voice, and some of the takeaways coming out of this are that, this is a really well optimized product. The only thing here is that they're priced a little bit higher versus their competition, which could ding them in terms of maintaining that bestseller badge. They're kind of right on the cusp for ratings, and then their share of voice is kind of in the mid range. So that's something, especially from a paid standpoint, they might see some of those challenger brands increase their advertising, and therefore they could start to slip a little bit in the paid share of voice. So these are kind of some of the ways that we look at this. And we can actually then create a score. So in this case, they're scored at a 4 on their key index in terms of predicting if they'll maintain that bestseller badge. Here's a similar way to look at this. So this was actually a redacted example for a client. And basically we were evaluating their top products from a sales perspective against the average of their competition across areas like price, reviews, ratings, and bestseller rank, which is BSR. And so in this case, we were able to see, so Z-score for price is basically, how much higher is their price versus the average of the competition. So having that be above 1 means that they're basically above their average of competitors on pricing there. And then for the others, they're below. And then same thing for Z-score reviews. You can see that, if they're below 1 here, that means that they have a lower count of reviews relative to the mean of their competition. And that was really the biggest area for this particular client. So in increasing their count of reviews, their ratings were generally pretty strong. And you can see that in their category bestseller rank, it was not in the top 5, but basically in the top 20 or 50. So this helps us understand where they can improve, looking at it a little bit more from a data science perspective against the competition. And then this is actually another free tool that we have. It's called the Momentum Commerce Search Trends tool. And what we're able to see here is, so basically what you can do is you punch in the brand and it will, it'll show you all of the search terms associated with your brand. So basically, in this case, we're able to see that there are opportunity search terms and direct search terms. So direct search terms are those where your product is appearing in the top 10 search results. And then opportunity search terms would be terms where your competitors are appearing in the top 10 search results, but you are not. So it doesn't mean that you're not ever appearing in search results. This was specifically the top 10. But in looking at it this way, we're able to kind of pinpoint some opportunities from both a media targeting standpoint, as well as a content optimization standpoint. So, if your competitors are appearing for a lot of top search terms and you're not, there might be opportunities to incorporate some of those into your PDP content. That's actually that's how we optimize content at Momentum for our clients, is we actually will run this and create a list of terms and then incorporate that into our copy recommendations. And then similarly on the media standpoint, if you find that there are a lot of terms that are opportunity terms here, meaning you're not appearing for them in search results, then that could indicate an opportunity to potentially get a little bit more aggressive on some of those terms in your paid ad efforts. This is an example of how we might just think about kind of framing the strategy for a brand that we're working with. And so, the actual strategy would vary depending on the brand's weaknesses and strengths. But in this example, we're able to see, so for these themes of activation, strategy, analytics, controlling the buy box, really, really critical. This concept of availability is marketing, optimizing product pages. So this idea of increasing your discoverability on the platform. This is kind of what we talked about in terms of ensuring that your content is really well optimized. And then also making sure that you're owning category search. So what that means is, for the most relevant search queries on the platform to your products, making sure that your products are appearing in search results. Otherwise, you're not visible. And so some ways that we might recommend actually activating that are, one of our recommendations might be, okay, let's, really get aggressive with advertising on specific search niches that are really relevant. And we think we're going to see really strong performance, but let's make sure that we really own those. And then once we increase review count and organic rank, let's maybe cut back a little bit on advertising to then move more towards efficiency. This theme comes up a lot when we get questions about launching new products on the platform, given how important sales history and review counts are. And we just kind of talked about that. How do you increase or how do you best propel a new product on the platform? And so this might be part of that recommendation, could be, ensuring that you're upfront investing in media and really, really optimized content upfront, which may be less profitable. And then in the long term, once you start to gain sales and review count, and then you start appearing more organically for that product, then you can start to increase your efficiency and decrease your spend. That's just kind of an example of how we might think about a broader strategy. And then also this idea of, in this particular case, it's really hard to be successful on Amazon across a really large category or catalog rather. And so, really leaning into some of your top sellers or into some of the top products that you're hoping to push, maybe from like a promotional standpoint, or if it's a new product, but really kind of focusing on those fewer, bigger bets will sometimes help with achieving success versus trying to do so across a really large catalog. And then leveraging that competitive intelligence across really underpinning everything. So those are just some examples of how we might think about a larger strategy. And then I think this might be one of the last sections, but another question that comes up is, what categories should I expand into? We recently had a question from a client on, we sell this product on .com, but we don't on Amazon. We're not sure if we should. How should we think about that? What's happening in the market? Is there an opportunity here? So those are questions that we receive a lot and we help our clients look into. In this case, let's use a quick example. This is very high level. There are a lot of other factors that go into making this decision, but let's think about what that could be for Carhartt. So we already kind of talked about their seasonality. This is a different cut, though. It looks very similar to the market share line graph that we showed earlier, but this is actually monthly search volume. This is coming from our data at Momentum. We're able to estimate monthly search volume. This is specifically for Carhartt as a brand term. So we're able to see, again, that high seasonality there in the fall and early winter. Also thinking about what gaps exist in their catalog. In this case, I was approaching it more from a where should they expand? And so just looking at their store, their brand store on Amazon, as well as on their website, they have a ton of different categories. I didn't realize until I looked into this, how many categories they really do offer. Generally in the branding of work focused and winter, fall, cold weather themed, and that kind of work shop clothing niche. But what's interesting is they do sell shorts, they do sell t-shirts, things like that. But what I didn't see was that they don't have swimwear, for example. So what would that mean? How would we think about that if we thought about expanding into swimwear? Does that even make sense? One thing that we would look at is just how big is the size of the prize? So how big is that market on Amazon? And so we were able to pull monthly revenue estimates from Similarweb shopper tool. We're able to see that on average last 12 months, it's about 148 million. And also, is this category growing or declining on Amazon? And it's growing 25% year over year. And what's also interesting is that, top months makes sense, but in spring and summer are really high revenue months for men's swimwear. So perhaps that could be a category that would, be complementary to their other products, as well as create a more consistent revenue stream. Of course, other factors go into that, their brand image, production costs, et cetera. But this is just thinking about this from a market standpoint. And then another thing that we can look at here is just, if they were to enter that market, what kind of barrier are we looking at? How difficult would that be? Is there one key leader that owns all of the market share, in which case overturning that leader might be really hard? So that's kind of this idea of, is the market, concentrated or diffuse? In this case, looking at the top 5 brands in men's swimwear, 36% of them, the top 5 brands have 36% share in the category. So while it's not the most concentrated category I've ever seen, it's not the most diffuse either. It's kind of mid-range, what's interesting is Canoe Surf is a 1P seller on Amazon, and then Mom Magic is Chinese factory. So I think if they were to enter this, price would be a difficult hurdle for them, looking at some of the price points here. But the Carhartt brand actually holds a lot of weight on the platform. So it's possible that they could be successful. So that's just kind of a way that we might look at some of the shopper tools to think about the market and where you might want to expand. So with that, that gives you kind of a flavor of some of the ways that we use the shopper tool, as well as our own Momentum Commerce insights to help advise our clients on key business problems and questions around growing on Amazon. We're opening it up now to Q&A, and then I also have our contact information, as well as in this deck that will be shared. There's some key resources, free resources, our brand index, our search trends tool. We also have a Turkey 5 leaderboard that helps identify kind of who's winning or losing from a paid share of voice and pricing standpoint in the post-holiday period versus the pre-holiday period, since we're coming right out of kind of Cyber 5. So thought that might be interesting to share too.
Amazing. Thanks, Eileen. Guys, this is your opportunity to ask both Brandon and Eileen questions. Get them in ASAP. We've got a few to field in the meantime. Eileen, the first one's at you. And what are the indicators I should focus on when evaluating markets outside of Amazon?
Yes. So thinking about expanding outside of Amazon. So that's something that we've actually been able to help answer for our clients using the shopper tool as well. And Brandon, you would actually know better here in terms of the full breadth, but I know that in the shopper tool, there's now Walmart.com, Target, Best Buy, a couple of other platforms as well. And so within the shopper tool, you can look at category, very similar. So category estimates, sales estimates, brand performance within the shopper tool. So we did that analysis recently for a client. We looked at what did the market look like on Walmart and Target, because those were the two that they were considering expanding into. How large was it? Which platform was larger? Because that can vary by category. Typically it's Walmart, but sometimes Target in certain categories is actually a little bit higher. And then who are the top brands that they would be competing against? So those are a couple of ways, and we ended up providing a couple of key recommendations on where they should move into and what product lines to consider.
Perfect. Thanks, Eileen. Next question, and it's another one for you. It reads, I'm trying to market myself for a potential acquisition. What metrics should I be focusing on based on your experience?
So if you're trying to market yourself for a potential acquisition, a lot of the competitive data has, so we do this analysis. We work with some sell side banks and have done projects like this to help market brands. And so, rather than in a due diligence project, usually we're focused a little bit more on SWOT analysis. So looking at weaknesses and opportunities and kind of looking at like financial plans. On marketing yourself, it's more about highlighting unique insights that show that your brand is really successful on the platform. And so some of the ways that we've done that is, we'll look at some of the same metrics that we actually reviewed here. So how you're doing against your competition, share of voice, market share, basic things like that. Are you in a category that's growing? Those are all things that are going to be really attractive to buyers. But then also highlighting if you have any unique attributes. So things that we've looked at are like, like, are you accelerating your review count over time more than your competitors? Or, if you're a brand that has one or two really key legacy products and a buyer might be concerned about your revenue diversification, like we've been able to help brands look at how quickly they're accelerating sales for new products, looking at, reviews, again, their sales velocity. So it's kind of about, looking at knowing what attributes help predict success on Amazon, leaning into those that tell that right story for your brand and help highlight how you're more successful than others on the platform.
Makes sense. Thank you, Eileen. A really more general question about Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Obviously, we touched on it within the presentation itself. Really looking at your experience, what you witnessed. The question is really how aggressive were the discounts or advertising tactics this year?
Yeah, so it varied by category, and that's where the Turkey 5 tool really comes in handy there, because we're able to see by category how aggressive were those discounts and how much were they increasing in paid share voice. I will say that so the brands that seem to be most successful were doing a combination of both. Definitely decreasing their prices, but also making sure that they were really, really visible from a paid media standpoint. So typically when, and feel free, anyone on the phone, to play around with this tool and look at it for your specific category. But basically, when we look at the top performers, generally they had a high paid share voice and a high discount relative to their competition that really helped them win over that period.
Okay, yeah, that would absolutely make sense. And Brandon, good news. We obviously, as Similarweb, released something rather unusual for us this week, the Amazon dashboard, which is a great new free tool. And we've had a question about that. Is Brandon able to talk more about that dashboard too, that we released earlier this week?
Sure, yeah. So we, like Eileen was mentioning, Momentum's free tools, Similarweb Shopper Intelligence actually just came out with our own free tool. It covers a slice of the data that's available in the Shopper Intelligence platform. So if you have time and you're interested, definitely check it out, get familiar with our UI and just kind of Similarweb and Shopper Intelligence in general. The free tool is a really good way for analyzing internal sales, understanding, what are your products that are leading and what categories are you leading in the most? And it's also makes it really easy to report to your stakeholders and superiors. So I'll go ahead and throw that in the chat. And if you feel free to check it out.
Thanks, Brandon. And final question. Is the decline you see in searches on Amazon an industry-wide trend, i.e. due to an impending recession, or something specific about Amazon, either losing market share to Walmart, for example?
That is a great question, and one that we've been looking into. So that particular slide where we looked at the decline in search volume was specific to October 2022. And that was across all categories. So on average, 3% decline. But again, that did vary by category. This is how the market has been performing has been coming in as a question. We had a couple of clients that Black Friday, Cyber Monday, wasn't necessarily in line with their expectations, or maybe the year-over-year increase wasn't as high as they were expecting. We did see that across a few. And so, it depends on the category. Those with really high price points seem to be seeing a little bit softer performance this year than in prior years. So far there is a little bit of an indication of an impact in the Amazon performance from this kind of pre-recession that we're seeing. But it does, but those with lower price points that are also able to get a really strong share of voice and visibility on the platform are generally going to be seeing stronger performance. Amazon is a price sensitive platform. And we're definitely seeing some shifts in performance this year than in prior years, likely because of that macro recession that we're seeing.
Great. Okay. That is it for all outstanding questions. So all that's left for me to do is wrap up today's session. So, of course, a huge thank you to both Eileen and Brandon for their time this afternoon, and to our live audience for taking the time out to join us this afternoon. I hope you found it valuable and relevant. We'll follow up with you in the next coming days by email to ensure all of your questions about Similarweb and Momentum Commerce are answered, and that we've given you a copy of the slide deck too. A recording of the webinar will also be available on demand via our YouTube channel. And if you happen to miss anything or would like to share it with your peers, please do so. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.